For more on this, we're joined from Paris by Dr. Majid, the international law professor, and from Ramallah by Mr. Ahmed Fattouh, the Fattouh spokesperson. Gentlemen, welcome to In Depth. Mr. Fattouh, Netanyahu declared that the second phase will start very soon. Hamas says, though, it cannot begin under Israeli violations. How do you interpret these statements, this public confrontation?
Well, it's important here to note that the Israeli occupation is violating the peace treaty, the peace plan, Trump 20-point plan, immensely and continuously in the last, since it was signed in October 9th. They are violating term 3 of the plan, which says about the stop of all forces and all aggression and bombardment, which they don't. They are violating term 7 and 8, which speaks about the unhindered entrance of aid and the rehabilitation of the healthcare system and the infrastructure, which Israel is crippling. And it speaks about opening the borders in both directions for those who wish to leave and for those who wish to return, which Netanyahu refuses and spoke lately that he only will allow for the borders to open for those who want to leave, which means a voluntarily migration, which is a forced immigration, but under beautiful terms. Of course, that rejected and refused. Our stance is very clear. As a Palestinian National Liberation Movement, as a member of the PLO, our stance is the full withdrawal of the Israeli occupation from the Gaza Strip and to enter phase 2 of this deal, which speaks about the major issue of the conflict, the two-state solution, and the inauguration of the Palestinian state. This is the core element of this struggle. Without touching these points, it is an endless conflict which would inflict on the region and on the entire world. So Israel needs to respect these terms. It's imperative that U.S. administration has to step in and the mediators has to come into applying these terms and taking care of it. Of course, Hamas need also to be aware that the next phase is the phase of the Palestinian state. It's not the phase of political factions or any kind of division. This is the beginning of trying to work all together, the Palestinians, toward building and inaugurating the Palestinian state. That is a long negotiation process, a hard and strong political work that we need to work, very carefully and to be very aware that we shall remove all pretexts on the table for any powers who wish to eliminate the Palestinian state. Of course, we have to understand the fact that Netanyahu wants the phase 1 to stay indefinitely and wants this destabilization of Gaza and the West Bank. He wants to present to the world as if there's a vacancy of any Palestinian political entity, which is false. We do have the Palestinian Authority, and we have agreed with the Arab world and with Hamas and all the mediators about a technocratic, apolitical administrative committee that would rule Gaza until we go into the reconstruction and after that to the elections, which should take place in a peaceful and stable environment in order to begin the talk of the final points of the solution, and that is the independence of the Palestinian state. Israel wants to avoid going into that phase because that phase speaks about Jerusalem, that phase speaks about the refugees' rights of return, that phase speaks about the colonial settlements that continuously threaten and steal our lands and threaten our Palestinian people. The settlers' terrorism, the West Bank, is not separate from the terrorism of the Israeli occupation forces in Gaza Strip.
Yes.
What's going on today, just as you heard about the 18 colonial settlements that is approved by the Israeli government, this all is linked together in one plan to eliminate the Palestinian state. So we have to be careful, and here all the Palestinian factions must also be aware that any misrepresentation of the Palestinian case or to present it as if we are factions negotiating with Israel, not as a Palestinian entity, would weaken our position and weaken our independence and our struggle. So therefore we have to prepare ourselves for these scenarios.
Yes. Dr. Bouden, Netanyahu says he will discuss the remaining issues with US President Trump. Now, how much leverage does the US president actually have over the occupation army's military decisions on the ground?
Well, President Trump has a lot of leverages and he can decide. And Netanyahu has no choice than to execute the decision because this is the balance of power between the two persons and the two countries. But the point here is the will. There is an agreement. The Sharm el-Sheikh agreement was a positive agreement. It has make an improvement in the situation of the civil population by stopping the continuous killings and the starving, but and it has opened the door for a serious settlement. We have guarantors. We have a new situation which was created at the time, but we have seen that the implementation was not at the same level as the agreement itself. Mm-hmm. Now, what is the situation? Netanyahu is playing games to drag on and to keep the situation in his favor or in the favor of the Israeli state. Hamas, on the other side, they are also playing their own games and they are putting conditions. Why we need these conditions from both sides, whether from Netanyahu or from Hamas? There is no need for conditions now because there is an agreement and we have to implement the agreement. And the agreement was meant to stop the violations by Israel of the Palestinian rights and to withdraw from Gaza. So what are the difficulties? Wherever are difficulties, we have to now move ahead without conditions and to implement this agreement and to materialize these peacekeeping force or facilitating force or whatever we can call it, but we have to have these people, this force on the ground, and to open the borders, to let the aid come into Gaza, to open the borders on both ways, on both sides, so the people they want to go out, they can come back, which is a basic right. Mm-hmm. So we have to recall these things and to not create a problem within the problem. Mm-hmm. Because this situation is creating another conflict on the interpretation of the agreement. Mm-hmm. While we need that, and certainly the civilian Palestinian people, they don't need that. They want security for them, and they want this agreement to be implemented.
Mm-hmm. Mr. Fattouh, the occupation army has redefined the yellow line as a new border inside Gaza. Politically, does this create a de facto partition even before negotiations end?
Well, that's part of the Israeli games and the Israeli occupation tactics. What began as a temporary issue, they want to plan to make it a permanent issue. The Israeli occupation, since the very beginning, and we have warned against this, that wish to divide Gaza, and also they are working into dividing the West Bank to push the Palestinians out of their homelands and gradually build and increase their settlements and colonialism. So that's their plan, and they have spoken about it out loudly, actually, and proclaimed it in many occasions. So that's where we have to be very careful that the full withdrawal of Israeli occupation remains a main point of this peace plan. And for the Palestinian state to take its role and for the Palestinian Authority to assume its responsibilities in Gaza and the West Bank. Gaza is in part and parcel of the Palestinian state. We should be very clear here. Under one Palestinian government, one Palestinian law, and one Palestinian security force. So all these plans by Netanyahu aims to prolong this issue. As you know, he has issues internally, and he wished to keep stalling until he go to his election in 2026, hoping that he might win the election in the second term, and then he would begin to speak about some settlement. But also we have to understand that the Israeli far right do not believe in a two-state solution. So that is a major obstacle for any future talk. And the plan was very clear in its point 19, when it says that we will discuss the Palestinian rights to self-determination, and point 20, when they speak about a political framework, there'll be serious negotiations to go into the two-state solution. So that is the aim of the Israeli far right. They want to buy time to play games. In that response, we should not allow them to continue these games, and the deal must continue immediately and begin with the process of allowing for the Palestinian to govern themselves in Gaza, and for international forces to come as a protection for the Palestinian people in the first place. And on the borders of the Palestinian state, the internationally recognized state, which is in 1967 borders, we need the protection from this occupation. It's not the opposite. And that is a way to put Israel on its actual responsibility, that it is an occupation that need to be ended. Without going into the serious discussion and the political negotiation where the Palestinian legitimate representative is present in the table, I believe that would be just wasting time and money, and our people who's suffering in Gaza and who is suffering in West Bank are paying the highest price. As you see this winter season and this rainfall that flooded the refugee tents, increased their suffering immensely, and
Yes.
is strategic, that needs the immediate intervention. This is not only a humanitarian issue, this is a critical issue that harms people's lives. When children are on directly contact with this cold, we fear for their life. Therefore, the phase one must immediately begin with the reconstruction in phase two, and to start with allow the unhindered entrance of humanitarian aid with the caravans and the transportable homes, because these tents are not suitable for our people in this winter. So everybody hold responsibility of what's going on, and we should move quickly and swiftly to save our people from this catastrophe.
Yes, definitely. Dr. Bouden, Trump's framework really depends on an international stabilization force with no defined mandate or troop contributors. So does the US plan have real infrastructure behind it, or is it as vague as many observers note?
For the time being, this is just an idea, but this idea can have a material base and can be implemented into a real plan. But here, the Palestinians, they need to have a force behind them. If we compare with what's going on in Ukraine, the world has seen that when Donald Trump wanted to impose some views which are very close to Putin's views, Europe has stand with Ukraine, and they are pushing, and now they are reviewing the plan with the Palestinians. They need to be accompanied by Arab leaders, by Arab countries. They need to be accompanied by European countries, by other countries in the world, to be supported in the negotiations. Number two, the Palestinians must not be represented by Hamas, because Hamas has no credibility and has no legitimacy, and they must find a way to be that the Palestinians will be represented by an authority, even if it's provisional, and that authority must also be supported and backed by an international force, diplomatic force, political force. And the Arab countries are keen to do that. Egypt, Jordan, and the Gulf countries and the other countries are supporting the Trump peace plan, and the Europeans are doing the same. But and other countries like Brazil, like South Africa, and a lot of countries, so they can create a force, but they must be represented. And this representation, one time is the Abbas government, and then the Hamas government, etc. This is not serious, and this is weakening the position of the Palestinians. They must now find a way to have at least a provisional authority to be able to negotiate. And there is another issue which is important: the continuity of the territory of the Palestinian state. The game of Netanyahu is very clear: is to have a creeping expropriation of the Palestinian territories and the creeping occupation. And we have seen during the history, when you don't have the continuity of the territory will split a day or another. So this problem is very important, and there are ways to have a continuity between Gaza and the West Bank and Eastern Jerusalem. And this must be a key issue to have the unity of the Palestinian people with the representation and backed by the international community in the negotiations to implement this peace plan.
Yes. Well, Mr. Fattouh, speaking of governing Gaza now, reportedly Arab objections removed Tony Blair from the proposed governance structure. Does this reflect a rejection of outside management of the Strip under Trump's plan?
I have to note first that we do have a legitimate representation, and that is the PLO, represented by the Palestinian Authority in the occupied Palestinian territories. It is the entity that has a seat in the UN, which made the speech on the agreements and all that, and on the day of support the Palestinian people. So we do have a representation. The issue is that we have a separatist, and that was Hamas. And the Arabs do agree with us and do understand this. The reported news, I'm not sure if it's true or not, but the Arab world and our brothers and our partners in Egypt and in Jordan and in Saudi Arabia and also in Qatar and all our friends do understand that they want the Palestinian Authority to be there. We have formed the Arab Plan, which was adopted in the Arab League in the beginning of 2024. Which later was evolved to become the plan, the two-state solution plan that was adopted in the New York Declaration, that was adopted, of course, by Europeans and most of the world. So these are the bases that the international legitimacy do recognize. Now, in any case, first and foremost, Israel must withdraw from Gaza, and the rehabilitation process needs to begin. So for the Palestinian government to go back in Gaza, and as we have declared and we have announced that we want to make elections, general elections, parliamentary and presidentially, in Gaza within 1 year after the ceasefire. Until now, we don't have a serious ceasefire. These elections would shut down any kind of dissident forces or any factions who reject democracy, then will be removed from this, because this is an election will end it and end it for all. We made a huge reformations to the government, and as you have seen and has been many reported, we have very high integrity and transparent government, and we made changes to the law of the prisoners and the martyrs' salaries, and we have made change. We are going to discuss the education process. So all these reformation that was spoken about by the Western world and the international community is under revision and is in progress. So we have prepared our papers and we are ready, but we don't have the table. That's where the international community need to step in. Until now, the American administration is allowing Netanyahu to continue stalling, to continue his games, and that is not for the benefit of anyone. Hamas also, as our honorable guest said, is trying to prolong this process because Hamas want to improve their situation in Gaza and hope that they could have a seat on the day after. Now, this is not a game of political parties or political factions. This is a decisive moment for the Palestinian people as a whole. It's not about Fattouh or Hamas. This is about the Palestinian state. So what we say from Fattouh point of view, that this is the time for the Palestinian state to be present in Gaza and the West Bank, and for that we accepted the apolitical technocratic government, which we only request that it would be linked to the Palestinian government. So we protect that Palestinian entity and that Palestinian identity from being deleted by the occupation, that which have been reported in many occasions, want to make this separation permanent. So we have to be just clear about that and be strong in defending this.
Mm-hmm. Dr. Bouden, talking about the disarmament condition now, Hamas says it will hand over its weapons only if Israeli occupation ends. That they said they would at least talk about it. Now, how central is that demand to any future settlement, or at least the transition into a second phase?
Well, the withdrawal of Israel was in the Sharm el-Sheikh agreement. So anyhow, if we are going to implement it, and which is the aim of the international community now, it will come. So there is no need to put it as a condition, because it is coming in the agreement. So Hamas cannot put it as a condition, and here we see the political game. The matter cannot suffer again to continue this situation forever. And Hamas has a serious responsibility here, because it's giving excuses to Netanyahu to not withdraw. And we are now going out of the discussion on the implementation of the Sharm el-Sheikh agreement. We have to come to the major issues: withdrawal of Israel, opening the borders, leaving the possibility for the reconstruction to take place, establishing a peacekeeping force or a stabilization force. And all these must be now decided, implemented by the international community. And one of the more important, more urgent things is to have this stabilization force on the ground now, today, before tomorrow. This is an urgent matter. And then the other issues can come. And coming back to this situation of the representation of the Palestinians, it's a fact that Hamas has lost any representation, but also the PLO government must be opened up to other possibilities and other branches and other political forces to be really representative. In the West Bank, there is no elections for years and years. So now it's a matter of updating. It doesn't mean that they have no legitimacy, but the problem is that the legitimacy must be renewed and updated. And this is a need. To say that we are legitimate when we have election for the last 15 or 10 years or to whatever, it doesn't help, because this is a must. And this is good because we are now working under international standards, and then wanted to see people coming that. And this is why the technical government in Gaza was not the government, the PLO government. This is why the community needs that, and we need that for the whole representation of the people. And this is a need. And PLO must work on that. Hamas must withdraw, and the stabilization force must be on the ground.
Definitely. Mr. Fattouh, yes. Well, Mr. Fattouh, one final question, because we're running out of time now. Netanyahu acknowledged difficult questions still are on the table, but claims he completed the first phase obligations. Now, are the Israeli statements trying to frame Hamas as the only obstacle, and will Donald Trump be buying this?
He did not fulfill the terms of the agreement. He's violating them, almost all of them. He is still bombarding Gaza. He's still continuing his military operations in Gaza in violation to Term 3. He's still stopping and hindering the humanitarian aid. And as we have just witnessed, the tents are flooding, while the caravans and the transportable homes is not there, which was promised to be sent to the Palestinian refugees. So he is also violating Term 7 and 8, and also Term 12 by closing the borders, where our Egyptian brothers said clearly that the border is open from the Egyptian side, it's closed from the Israeli side, because they don't want to open it in both directions. And that stands in violation clearly with what Trump promised in the very beginning, that there will be no forceful immigration, and there will be a two-way borders where Palestine could leave and could return back as they wish. And of course, we have the issue of Palestinians who are in need of medical attention and medical surgeries that is not doable in Gaza right now because of the lack of equipment and medicine, that they need to be transferred to foreign countries and to other hospitals who are not unable to do that because of Netanyahu closure of the borders. So
Yes.
Netanyahu is not serious.
Yes.
He is not honest about it. He just said recently, almost to everyone, that he does not allow the Palestinian state, and he refused to have a Palestinian state neighboring Israel. So, we have to be very, I don't know, like, have to be honest with ourselves that Israel is the
Yes.
problem here, that they need to be faced and confronted by the international community.
And we're going to see how the US administration actually buys into that. Unfortunately, that's all the time we have for this episode of In Depth. But before we go, I'd like to thank Mr. Ahmed Fattouh, the Fattouh spokesperson, and Dr. Majid Bouden, the international law professor. Gentlemen, thank you very much for joining us here tonight on the show.